поставить на портик. Было несколько доводов в пользу того, чтобы разместить сокровища пригородных музеев именно в Исаакиевском соборе. Ну, во-первых, толщина стен около 5 метров, пробить такие очень и очень сложно. А во-вторых, руководство Ленинграда посчитало, что Исаакиев будет служить для фашистов рэперной точкой, то есть точкой, по которой наводят орудия. Так и произошло. По Исаакиеву не было нанесено ни одного прицельного удара. Золотой купол закрасили серым, окна заложили кирпичом. Но все же на соборе остались военные шрамы. И укрывшемуся в подвалах музейному братству не раз приходилось вздрагивать от звука падающих бомб. Но для них, как и для большинства ленинградцев, голод был страшнее снарядов.
Здесь было 72 сотрудника, и погибли от болезней, холода, голода 20 человек.
А детей было трое, всем по 5-6 лет, и все выжили. Спали, вспоминает Генрих Вейс, на нарах, в подвале, неотапливаемом, темном. Единственным источником света были коптилки.
Взрослым было значительно тяжелее, чем детям, потому что мы воспринимали это как данность. Ну вот холодно, но голодно, ну такая жизнь. То есть никаких других вариантов у нас не было.
Генрих Вейс как к живой прикасается к колонне, вокруг которой убирал снег страшной зимой с 41 на 42.
Наступала уже дистрофия, необходимо было двигаться. И вот чтобы хоть какая-то была якобы целесообразность, нам было давалось задание вот здесь вычистить. И мы с сестрой Маргаритой эту чистку осуществляли.
А вот наверх, на колоннаду, детей не пускали. Здесь велась серьезная работа, дежурили музыканты.
Для того, чтобы каким-то образом в условиях практического отсутствия аппаратуры определить время приближения и направление приближения самолетов, вот сюда поднимались студенты консерватории, потому что они обладали хорошим слухом. И вот эти данные по телефону, они сообщали внизу дежурному ГРУ для соответствующей встречи врага.
Как только блокада была снята, хранители поспешили каждый к своему дворцу и застали страшные картины разрушений и пожаров. Для них это зрелище было, возможно, даже страшнее блокадных испытаний. Разглядывая кадры хроники, невозможно поверить, что это блистательные дворцы Пушкина, Павловска, Петергофа и Гатчины.
Вы сейчас показываете этот роскошный тронный зал, лучше, можно сказать, во всех пригородах. Нет, ничего подобного. Так вот, это все воссоздавалось, вот это на моих глазах, и я должна сказать, что это совершенно феноменальный труд был. И вот для того, чтобы вот так вот стоять в таком парадном помещении с горящими лампочками, это даже мечтать было невозможно. Никто даже не представлял, что это можно как-то увидеть.
Вернув былое величие дворцам и паркам, ленинградские реставраторы совершили настоящий подвиг. Но важно помнить и о подвиге хранителей. Вот, например, эти два портрета из парадного зала Золотой анфилады Екатерининского дворца, из тех, что в блокаду спасены были в Исаакиевском соборе. В сырых и промерзших подвалах голодные замерзающие люди с маленькими детьми на руках жертвовали всем, чтобы сохранить вечные ценности для будущих поколений. Салима Зариф, Алексей Сосырин, Сергей Ищенко, Дмитрий Мещерский, Дмитрий Лукашевич, Галина Орлова и Александра Колкова. Вести недели. Северо-Западное бюро.
В пятницу в Пекине открываются зимние Олимпийские игры. Китайская столица – единственный город мира, что стал столицей двух Олимпиад – и летней, и зимней. На открытии будет и президент России. Наши спортсмены уже в Пекине и приступают к тренировкам. С напутственными словами к команде обратился Путин. Прямую трансляцию торжественной церемонии открытия 24-х зимних Олимпийских игр смотрите в пятницу в 15:00 только на телеканале «Россия». А пока олимпийскую тему продолжит наш саппор в Китае Александр Балецкий. Поистине уникальные кадры, которых не увидеть просто нигде. И эту высокую планку наши съемочные группы будут держать по ходу всей Олимпиады.
И сегодня мы въезжаем в официальную олимпийскую деревню.
Они уже обжились в олимпийской деревне и почти ориентируются в ее китайских лабиринтах.
Вот они.
сезоне.
Я всю ночь в клубе выискивала преступных элементов.
Мальчики, аккуратней. Потерпите, пожалуйста, это просто процедура такая. Но в колонии поселения будет полегче.
Рики. Капучино с шоколадным сиропом, как просил.
Я что-то...
A warm welcome to this talk. And we're going to cover some of the new information that's come out for the end of January from the British resources and government on Omicron. Now, wherever you are, it's very likely you're going to be exposed to Omicron in the next few weeks if you haven't been already. It's growing in the United States, it's growing in the United Kingdom, it's growing in Europe, it's growing in Canada, and as we saw, thankfully, the Ugandan doctors were pleased it was growing in Uganda as well. And of course, the BA2 is not a new variant, it's just a derivative of the original Omicron. So we had the original Omicron, and the BA1 kind of went that way on the evolutionary phylogenetic tree or the clade, and the BA2 went that way. So it's not that the BA2 evolved from the BA1, it didn't. They both evolved separately, but they're both Omicron variants and behave as such. And this is what we've been anticipating for some time, but it's always good to have the confirmation of this because this is going to be everywhere. So when we said everyone's going to be exposed to Omicron, those of us that have been exposed to Omicron BA1 so far, we're also going to be exposed to Omicron BA2, but I'm expecting you're going to have very high levels of immunity against BA2 Omicron and have absolutely minimal symptoms or in all probability no symptoms. Now I can't confirm that yet, but that's what I strongly suspect because that's the most common question we're being asked. So if you've had Delta, not much protection against symptomatic Omicron. If you've had vaccinations, not a lot of protection against symptomatic Omicron, to be quite honest, as we'll see. We've got some figures on that. But you are protected against hospitalisation. If you had Omicron, you're going to be protected from Delta. And if you've had Omicron BA1, it's looking likely that you're going to be protected from Omicron BA2, but I can't guarantee that yet. But that's what we think. Now I'm just going to run through some data here quickly on the graphics. Age and sex pyramid. So these are the ones that are officially genomically diagnosed BA2 so far in the United Kingdom. So we see males on this side, females on this side. And quite honestly there's nothing too surprising. That's pretty well the distribution we would expect. And for those numbers, that is that looks equal to males and females to me. Now, this is the number of BA2 cases that have been diagnosed in the world, and we see that the vast majority of them are in Denmark. Now, does this mean that the pandemic is particularly advanced in Denmark, or the BA2 is particularly advanced in Denmark? Where last time I checked, the official figures were 66% of cases in Denmark. It's probably nearer 80% of cases now are BA2 rather than BA1 Omicron. But the reason is, of course, well, partly the Danes have got such good monitoring, such good genomic monitoring. Of course, the virus has to be there to pick it up in the first place, but I suspect it's in other places as well. The BA2 is already in other places, just not picking it up anything like as quickly as we are as they are in Denmark. So that is Singapore there, that's others, that one there is the UK, and the United States, where genomic sequencing is notably poor compared to Denmark at least, at much lower numbers. Now we're going to look at this in a minute. This is BA2 compared to BA1. So overall growth rate, yeah, it's going to be faster. Growth advantages in transmissibility, yes. Growth advantages in terms of immune escape, probably less so. Now I'm not going to go through this in detail because we are going to unpick that a bit as we go through, so we've got a good understanding of that. And that's just a summary of that. So growth advantage, yes. Transmissibility, yes. It's growing much more quickly than BA1. And remember, this is BA1, new Omicron, as opposed to, so this is BA2, new Omicron, as opposed to BA1, old Omicron. Now, this next graphic is slightly more complicated. Now, what we have is the S gene deletion. The original Omicron showed S gene deletion on the PCR tests, whereas the Delta was S gene positive on the PCR test. So when Omicron first came along, cases that were S gene deleted looked like that they were the new Omicron, displacing the Delta, which was S gene positive. But the BA2 is also S gene positive. So what we would expect to see now is more and more S gene positive cases indicating BA2, because Delta's basically gone now. Delta's been replaced, as I must say we anticipated. So that's probably what's starting to happen. So we will start seeing, as time goes on, some more green here, indicating the S gene positivity. But it's not Delta coming back. It is BA2 becoming more prevalent. And I've got a bit of a blow up there, and we see that the percentage S gene target failure there. That's the target failure. So we would expect that line to start going down now as we get more BA.2, which is going to be S gene positive. Hope that makes sense. Here we see the change over time. So this is the original, well, not the original, but that's the alpha there. Then the delta, so that was the UK Kent mutation, as we called it in those days, the alpha. Then the beta took over. Of course, there's always going to be a splattering of more minor variants, although, so that's the delta. Here we see the Omicron really has taken over from this, and the total sequencing there that just indicates that the data's not quite up to date. But basically we see that Omicron now has completely taken over. So basically what's going to happen now is one shade of green will go to another shade of green, really, as the BA1 starts to be replaced by the BA2. So it's a bit complicated, but I hope those are useful graphics. Now, we don't want to be accused of any inaccurate information, so I've put all the links to all the government sites we're going to be using here, and being very careful just to make sure we're not straying off the data pathway. So all those links are there. Peruse them at your leisure. And this is my summary and interpretation of all those sites. So efficient. Here we have Omicron. So that says Omicron, but that's actually BA1. Genomically sequenced, nearly 1 million of them. Pretty impressive sequencing in the UK, it has to be said. That's quite impressive. BA2. So far, just under 2,000 officially genomically sequenced, but this number will start going up fairly dramatically soon. Assessment of rationale. BA1 Omicron is currently the dominant variant in the UK, which we know. The risk assessment uses the characteristics of BA1 as the baseline. So what we're doing now is comparing BA1, because we're already assuming that, well, we are right in assuming that Delta was basically gone. We've been delivered from the Delta outbreak by the Omicron. So we're now comparing Omicron with Omicron, BA1 with BA2. Overall growth rate. Red, moderate. So red means there's definitely a pretty strong overall growth rate. So far, the data confidence on this is moderate. Now, this is not saying it's in doubt. It's saying that we only have moderate evidence for that so far. Soon, that will become, I'm predicting, strong evidence. This can only go on the data that we have to the data cut-off points. There is evidence of a growth advantage for BA2 compared to BA1 in more than one country, so that's the evidence. All countries, actually, where it's been looked at. UK data evidence of increased growth of BA2 compared to BA1, so it's clear on the UK data. All regions of England where there's sufficient cases to assess, so this is not just an isolated thing, this is everywhere. Observed growth advantage support by increased household secondary attack rates in the UK data as well. So the secondary attack rate is people that the individual infected person passes it on to. Now, why is this? First one, growth advantage, transmissibility. Pretty sure about that. Low level of confidence so far, but it will get bigger as we get bigger numbers. So they say it's plausible that transmissibility is contributing to growth advantage. Now, they're right in saying plausible, because there's only relatively low numbers involved. In the next data release, when there's much higher numbers involved, I'm sure that'll change to high levels. Given high secondary attack rate and apparent immune evasion, so there's high secondary attack rates, there's lack of immune evasion. So if there's lack of immune evasion, the method of increased spread and growth of the virus must be increased transmissibility. It's unclear at present how this would arise from the BA2 mutation profile. Interesting, so the people that examine the genetic profile of the spike protein, for example, or the whole genetics of the virus, can't see yet from that why the configuration of amino acids as a result of the mutations on the virus should make it more transmissible, and yet the empirical evidence is showing that. So this is one of those cases where the empirical evidence, the epidemiological evidence, is running ahead of the laboratory evidence. It's likely that the laboratory evidence will come and people will identify why it is more transmissible. But as of now, we're not sure why it's more transmissible, we just know it is. Well, we essentially know it is. Growth advantage 2, the other possible mechanisms we've looked at many times, immune escape. Amber, not a very high risk of that, and even then we're not too sure of it. So based on early BA2, does not appear more immune evasive than BA1, so it's not more immune evasive. This is why I am confident that if you've been infected with Omicron BA1, you will not be reinfected with Omicron BA2, at least with no, if you do, with minimal symptoms or asymptomatically. So I'm not worried about reinfection. I'm expecting good levels of natural immunity as a result of BA1 Omicron, and I'm expecting good levels of natural immunity as a result of BA2 Omicron. And of course, as we've said, back immunity against Delta. We have been very fortunate with this. Things are still difficult at the moment in hospitals, there's no question about that, but it would be way, way worse if this was the Delta carrying on. This is based on vaccine sera, so this is people that have been vaccinated, taking their blood, taking the antibodies from their blood. So we're not expecting significant vaccine escape. Remember, when we say we're not expecting significant vaccine escape, that means we're not expecting more vaccine escape from BA2 compared to BA1. A preliminary neutralisation study does not suggest a difference in neutralisation between the two. So that's looking promising that we're not expecting significant immune escape or immune evasion. No live virus data available. So in terms of the live virus, at the moment we simply don't know. I am speculating it's going to be good, but I don't know that for sure. We have to wait for the further data. The data could prove me wrong. I doubt it, but it could prove me wrong. Vaccine effectiveness against symptomatic disease. No suggested difference between BA1 and BA2. So again, looking good. No difference in symptomatic disease. Infection severity. Don't know. Insufficient data. We simply don't know. No systematic analysis comparing BA1 to BA2 are yet available. And yet, from other tentative studies, we are seeing that there's no increase in pathogenicity between BA2 and BA1. But as they correctly say, as of now, we don't know. But I'm not concerned about it. So this takes us on to technical briefing 35, which is this one. These come out pretty well. I think these are every week from the government, and they really are pretty. They take a bit of reading, I must say, but they are very thorough. And I don't know if it's just me that I understand British cultural writing better than American writing, but I find them so much more comprehensible than CDC data. CDC papers are really hard to read. As I say, it could just be me not used to reading American data, but I find the UK ones so much easier to read than the US ones. Someone in the US, they might find it the other way around. Although plenty of people in the US have criticised the relative opacity of the CDC writing. Happy with the UK writing. Considering the technical stuff they're transmitting, it's pretty good. Now, this is rather interesting. Cumulative cases in England of variant indexed by day since the 5th reported case. So if you take data from the 5th reported case, now of course these are all going to be different dates. But here we have, for example, the beta variant that never really took off because it was outcompeted by the delta. That was the delta on that line there. That was the so-called delta plus that you might remember. Omicron has grown much more quickly than any of them. So obviously this is not a particular time period, this is just days since the 5th reported case. So it shows Omicron has got this incredible growth advantage. It has just absolutely scooted up, even compared to Delta. And of course the Delta was steep on the previous variants as well, the Alpha variant for example, but dear me, the Omicron has been fast. And it's looking like this will turn out to be advantageous compared to living with Delta for sure. And as we've said, we believe this could be the herd immunity that ends the pandemic. And I was very pleased to see the doctors from Uganda agreeing with me yesterday. I didn't recall that video, or the day before. Data cut off 24th of January for BA2. Actually, the sequencing data was only up to the 16th of January, so it's always behind, of course. 96.1% of sequence with BA1, 3.4 with BA2. Now we can expect that to, well, of the 16th of January. Basically, it's doubling every week at the moment, so that's going on for, I don't know how long ago is it? Anyway, never mind. It's doubling about every 7 days, so it's probably going to be, what, probably about 14% at the moment would be a reasonable guess. 14, 15%, but of course pretty soon I would, the week after I expect that to be 28%, and then it's going